June is going to be wild, but this is what Kirby Smart does best, right? Welcome to our Georgia coverage, featuring, of course, Palmer Thombs from Dogs 247 Sports. So we encourage you to head on over there, of course, this being big recruiting season, even bigger than it usually is, to head on over to 247 Sports. Palmer, how we doing today?
Doing well, enjoying a nice, relaxing Memorial Day weekend before the craziness of June starts up next Tuesday.
So I saw a figure the other day, and I'm not going to try to remember the specific numbers, but basically only 10 to 15% of the players that are typically committed at this point are committed for good reason. They haven't been able to get on campus. So what that tells us is that you got like 85% of the players to 90% of the players that usually would be already committed, certainly would be still recruited and could flip or whatever. But that much more activity is going to go on once we hit that first weekend of June. All those visits ensue. And of course, you know that I talk to guys like you all over the country. The same deal's going on at all the major schools across the country. And then you would think late June to early July, we're just going to get commits flooding in constantly by the day. Do you get a feel for the timing of what that could look like?
Yeah, like you said, I think it's late June, early July. I think a lot of these teams are trying to get in there early and get these kids to see these campuses, in these first couple of weeks of June, just so that, they can have their minds made up. A lot of these kids, do want to make a decision before their senior year so that they can focus on, high school football, finishing up their senior, their high school experience. So I think, like you said, late June, early July, you're going to see a lot of these commits roll in and throughout the month of July as well. So this June recruiting period, like you said, crazier than ever has been before. But because of the, circumstances of COVID, these kids haven't been on campuses since, first weekend in March of 2020. So that's 15 months now. It's the longest that these kids have ever gone without being on these campuses, without interacting with these coaches face to face. And so, and like you said, this is what Kirby Smart does best. For better or worse, he's one of the best recruits in the country, or best recruiters in the country. And he's looking forward to bringing in some of those best recruits in the country to see Athens, Georgia over the next couple of weeks.
Please like the video, share the videos out on social media, because if you enjoy the content and you're here all the time, others will as well. And of course, subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. All right, Palmer, we're going to put you to work. Let's start at running back. Branson Robinson's a guy that everybody wants, but Georgia looks to be in pretty prime position right there, and he's going to make an early visit at the beginning of June.
Yeah, Branson Robinson, number 5 running back in the country. He's a 4-star prospect right now. Rated the number 57 player overall per the 247 Sports composite, top player in the state of Mississippi. He will be on campus for Georgia that first weekend of June for an official visit. He's a guy that reminds Georgia fans of Nick Chubb, and his build. He's super strong, even just the kind of the way that he looks. He's 5'10", 220, can, lift with the best of them in the weight room. He runs hard. Georgia's got a running back committed already in Jordan James out of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. The Nashville area, putting out some big time prospects. This is a guy that they want to add on to him. They really want to take 2 running backs in this class, knowing that, you're going to have Zamir White and James Cook likely headed out after this next season. So you got to bring in 2 top guys to replace those 2. And, if you're Georgia and RBU and you want to keep that claim, you got to get some of your top prospects. And Branson Robinson, number 5 running back in the country, certainly one of those for the Bulldogs.
And Palmer, you're of the thought that if it's not Branson Robinson, who is it? Or is there anybody? It seems like you and others are pretty much focused on him, and he's the guy.
Yeah, I think he is the guy for Georgia in terms of adding on another running back. There's certainly other guys that they are, still talking to, but he's their top priority at that position. Del McGee has made him a priority, and I think there are other guys that are lower down on that list. In terms of the running backs, they're obviously still in conversation with some of these guys. Katron Allen, who's the number 10 running back in the country. out of IMG, Trevor Etienne, Travis's little brother, Tevin White. Those are some of the guys that are lower down on the list that Georgia has been in talks with. But, I think for Georgia, they really, really, really want to get Branson Robinson in the mix and, have a good opportunity to show him, what Athens is all about in the, early in the month of June.
Georgia strong in the states he would expect them to be. Evan Stewart comes out of Texas. Georgia makes a presence there. And run down the wide receivers for us.
Yeah, Georgia's got one commit at the wide receiver position already. Denylon Morissette out of Kennesaw, North Cobb, Atlanta area. He is 7-on-7 teammates with Georgia's 5-star quarterback commit in Gunnar Stockton. One of the top prospects in the country at quarterback, and also 7-on-7 teammates with Georgia defensive back commit Marcus Groves Killebrew, as well as a couple of big-time Georgia prospects. So Denylon, Gunnar, Marcus, those guys have been in the ear of some of these other big-time prospects for the Bulldogs at wide receiver and at tight end as well. Kojo Antwi would be one of the big-time prospects for them. He's a 7-on-7 teammate of theirs, as well as tight end Oscar Delp. Both of those guys are out of the Atlanta area. Obviously, that's a big recruiting ground for the Bulldogs. And both of them will be on campus along with Denylon for that first weekend in June. You mentioned Evan Stewart. He's certainly a top prospect for Georgia at the wide receiver position. Speedster out of Texas, Frisco, Texas, Dallas area. He is former Texas commit, ended up coming off of Texas's commit list when Steve Sarkisian took over as the head coach. And not anything against Steve Sarkisian. He just wanted to be able to, see some of these schools in June once the recruiting period opened up, wanted to, make those connections with other coaches. And so, Evan Stewart, he's got some family connections in Atlanta. Georgia's been pushing for him for a while. He will be on campus in June, believe the third weekend. He will be there June 18th, along with some other big-time prospects for an official visit. But like I said, they're hitting that first weekend hard. We'll have Kojo Antwi and Oscar Delp on campus, two pass catchers that they would really like to bring in, as well as the second weekend they will have Andre Green Jr., who's a prospect out of Virginia, big-time prospect for them. So they've got, one wide receiver that they love in each of those weekends that they would love to pick up as a commit. They'll have them on campus for an official visit, as well as Morissette, a commit right now, that first weekend with his teammates.
Talking up the Dogs with Palmer Thombs from Dogs 247 Sports. Of course, jump on over there and check out his work and the rest of the staff. The 247 brand. That's all we need to say. And of course, this is the time to do it with recruiting about to go crazy. The floodgates about to open. Okay, the offensive line, as we discussed before we started record, Palmer, a bit different than what it's been in the past. Of course, Kirby Smart has recruited the offensive line as good as anyone in the country, but a bit of a different approach and just a numbers game at this point.
Yeah, you look at the last couple of classes that Sam Pittman brought in, and prior to him going to Arkansas as the head coach, and Matt Luke has just kind of picking up where he left off. It's been 5 stars on 5 stars on 5 stars, and they've been able to recruit those guys because there have been positions open. I think you look at where they're at now, like you said, it's a numbers game. They've got to get guys for offensive line because you can't get shut out on an offensive line class. But it's really hard to get 5 stars on 5 stars to sit behind 5 stars. And, so Georgia, right now looking at, some guys that might not be atop the offensive line class. But I think these are some guys that Georgia is certainly excited to get in there to work out. I think one of the things that, like we discussed, it's been 15 months since these coaches have seen these guys in person. This month they're going to be able to have these guys in there working with their assistant coaches, working out for the coaches. and really getting to know these kids and help them develop as prospects. And so, that first weekend, you'll see Georgia first week, you'll see them having a couple of, 3-star, 4-star guys on the offensive line. Drew Bobo, who's out of Columbia, South Carolina, son of former Georgia offensive coordinator, former Georgia quarterback Mike Bobo, who is now over at Auburn. He'll be in there. Tyler Gibson, Kason Henry, Elijah Pritchett, who's a big-time prospect for them out of Columbus, Georgia. He's a 4-star tackle. Probably one of those top 5 offensive linemen that Georgia would take. He'll be in there on June 1st to work out. And then, I think if you're looking at just who Georgia, if they could have their pick of whoever they want in this class, realistically, in terms of, these offensive linemen, Tyler Booker out of IMG Academy, he's big on Georgia. He'll be in June 18th, along with several of his IMG teammates. Addison Nichols will be in there the first weekend. He's out of the Greater Atlanta Christian. And so he'll be in there the first weekend. And then Jacob Hood is another guy that Georgia really likes. He's out of the Nashville area. We mentioned with Jordan James that they've got one commit in that area. They're looking to get 2 and pick up Jacob Hood.